Welcome to another Cowboys exclusive edition of the Texas Porch. I am JP Heath. I hope that you are safe out there in these anxious times. Maybe the next 50 minutes or so can take your minds off things, but just file it away for a few months from now if and when we have NFL football. I think the good bet is that we will, but I like to do these podcasts after every game, and we'll aim for at least one Cowboys pod a month. These are really fun to do, especially in the offseason. There's still a lot going on. That's the NFL brand, the 12-year-a-month sport. But when big news breaks, number 4 signing a 5-year contract, hopefully coming up here soon, we'll break in for another special pod with that too. But if this is somehow your first time listening, maybe the Power of the Star brought you here. My friends and I have a podcast here, the Texas Porch. It is Texas talk with a touch of sports, and from time to time we will branch off and do more topic-specific things like the Cowboys and the schedule. This one now here today, but the TexasPorch.com for all your archived episodes, Texas Porch Pod on Facebook and Twitter as well. But this is only episode 12, matching the great Roger Staubach, but plenty of time to catch up. But Cowboys guys are here, Kevin and Josh. Gents, how is this lazy Sunday treating y'all?
Oh, it's pretty good.
Okay.
It's hot and humid. I'm lying. It is hot and it's humid.
It's pretty nice here. I spent most of the day outside reading a book.
Mm-hmm.
God bless you.
That doesn't happen often.
So I wanted to get into the game day mode with the lack of games for myself to broadcast, but the podcast has really taken the place of that part of my brain. I'm in game day gear, gentlemen. You see it? Game day gear. Going with the blue Cowboys shirt. I've got a couple great ones, but this one is it's nice and tight here. But first things first, you may have heard there's a worldwide pandemic happening as we tape this.
What?
But, yes,
what are you talking about?
I know, right? It's crazy, but some acknowledge.
I heard there was some bad flu going around or something.
Yeah, it's crazy how it spreads too. But first things first, will this NFL season start on time? That's first part of the question for Josh. What do you think?
I tend to think they're going to find some kind of way to get it started. I don't know exactly how, but I kind of think they'll get it started on time, whether there's fans or not, or anything like that. The particulars I'm not sure of. I guess I wouldn't. I definitely wouldn't be shocked to see it start late, but they're going ahead like it's going to start on time. So basically, my way is saying I have no idea, but just a wild guess that they will.
Yeah, it's a hard thing to tell, really, because that's mass gatherings of people at sporting events, concerts, and things like that. And if there were going to be a spike, if it were going to go back up, because it's going to be hard to get this thing done unless there's a vaccine or everybody's had it. Knock on wood. That if you get it, you can't really get it again, or it wouldn't be as bad. It's really hard to tell.
We'll also talk Dak, and we'll talk Dalton, Andy Dalton coming up, and how those two, I guess, kind of go together in a sense. That some people think that that's a big safety net. I don't think as much, but anyway, getting back to the original question, I don't think it'll start on time. I think it'll be at least a couple weeks late, and I think they get rid of some preseason games and maybe tweak a game or two, or maybe eliminate the bye week before the Super Bowl. I think they'll still fit it in and try to get that Super Bowl in around the same time. But and I'm only assuming there won't be fans at first. Maybe there's some kind of phase in. Hopefully eliminate some of these stupid preseason games. But what do you think? Y'all both already answered. On time was your answer, but do you think fans come in at the start, whenever that start is, or do you think no fans this year? Not at all. Surely they'd come around eventually. Kevin, what do you think?
This is just so hard to predict. It really is.
Yeah.
I think you got to get a lot closer before you get there. But, I mean, if they did have fans and there wasn't clear evidence, like there wasn't a vaccine available or something like that, they might come in, do every other row or every third row of fans, and you can have families sit together, or the group who came together, they get to sit together, but you got to do it. And then you have food delivered, almost all of the food and beer delivered, some sort of light restrictions like that. And really, it seems most likely for things to get phased in like that. And then you wait till you do that for a couple of weeks, see if there's a big spike. and then you phase in a little more. You just try to be as cautious as possible, while still, we still have to live our lives too. We can't shut literally everything down forever. So, you just hope. Now, if a vaccine comes along, I'm pretty sure Jerry just go ahead and post up the vaccine building in front of it and go, come on in, y'all, buy your ticket. Let's get in here, watch some football.
And charge you $20 plus a $25 Miller Lite to do that as well.
$30 convenience fee too. All right.
Yeah, like a PSL for the vaccine. That's what it's going to turn into. Josh, what do you think? We might or might not be some of those fans that are in the stands, but what do you think? Do you have the Cowboys crazies in attendance this year? Got to be some, right? I don't want to sway you, though. What do you think?
At some point, there'll be fans there. That I can say with guaranteed certainty that you're not going to have 90,000 people there on opening night. But I don't know if you start with empty stands and, like Kevin said, just phase it in as you go along. I would think they're not playing it in front of an empty stadium all year, but they're sure not playing in front of packed stadiums all year. So it's just going to be finding the right balance, like he was saying, of getting whatever fans in there, and then the owners, as like Jerry Jones, taking as much advantage as he can. When you don't have as many seats available, you spend $2,000 a ticket instead of $500 a ticket, and you've got the crazy people that have a bunch of money that are there to do it. So then the owners aren't quite as hit as they would think. So, especially in Dallas, if there's some other place, I would say like a Tampa Bay, except, they've got fans now this year, or they will with the bandwagon. So, your Packers, your Cowboys, your Steelers, they're just going to charge like crazy if they're able to let any fans in. So that'd be the way they would stop that. But I would guess there will be fans in some capacity, if not opening week, then sometime soon to phase it in. I'd still be pretty surprised if even by November or December they've got full stadiums.
And the Bengals will actually see a spike in attendance up to 30,000 fans. Boom, boom.
That's what I was about to say. Andy Dalton will feel right at home with, the social distance fan base.
We know each other too well, and there you go. Can't pass up a shot to kick the Bengals in the crotch. The worst run organization in pro sports, perhaps. But anyway,
Cleveland.
Yeah, well, hey, that's coming up. You looked at my show notes already. That's
1 and 2.
That's coming up as well. But here are a few notes and trends. We'll go over each game and just kind of have our roundtable mini talks on each game, some notes and anecdotes on each game. But here are a few notes and trends about the schedule. A little late on the podcast, but some life events came up last week. Was not able to get around it, and I text the guys, hey, I'm tired. I'm exhausted. I can't do this here. So little fresh mind, fresh eyes looking at this thing. But here's some notes and trends. Last year, the Cowboys appropriately had an 8-8 season to send Jason Garrett out into the night. 3 seasons too late, in this podcaster's opinion. But
in hindsight, that's 10 seasons too late.
Well, I'll give him
in hindsight.
Yeah, but I'll give him 2014. You had the Dez catch game. I guess Dez no catch game. 2014, after 15, I just think after 16, it was time to cut bait. But anyway. The off week does not come until week 10. For most teams, it's generally in that wheelhouse of the middle part of the season, but that's pretty late by off week standards. But there's 5 primetime games for now before you get to the flex scheduling, and that does not include the solo window on Thanksgiving. But you've got 3 Sunday night football games, a Monday night football game. It seems weird, like forever since they've had one a year. And I don't know why this seems weirder, but they've got the one against the Cardinals. And then they've got the one Thursday night game after Thanksgiving. But 5 noon games for now. Kevin, Josh, and I always joke that we call that the Houston Texans window, not to punch the neighbors down I-45, or I guess 59 for me. But there's 5 noon games for now. You got to figure one of those 2 would be flex, right? I mean, from y'all's memory, doesn't that usually happen last, 10, 15 years? NBC's had that flexibility. You'll have a couple noon games that'll go to a Sunday night game.
Yeah.
The NFC... As long as they're not total... Exactly. As long as they're not total trash, then the Cowboys get flexed as many times as possible. But I mean, that takes even 8 and 8. They're getting flexed to different ones, so I would assume that that's.
Yeah, they still bring in more eyeballs, regardless.
Yeah, and I mean, you combine that, the 5 primetime games with all of the 325 games, plus the ones that'll be flexed. I counted it, 11, 12 games maybe in that later part of the primetime schedule where, like you said, the eyeballs will be on it. But the NFC East this year is paired with the AFC North, so you can...
Which, that's an Andy Dalton bonus right there, by the way. I hadn't heard it talked about a whole lot, but bringing him in from the AFC North, it should be at least some minor benefit, even if it's on directions to get to the stadium. I don't know.
Yeah, we'll talk about Dalton coming up later on, but I didn't think about that aspect of it for that divisional bonus. But I think even if you're not paired with the AFC North, I think that's a great signing. But we're getting to that here later on. But Cowboys 8-8 last year, as we mentioned, 5-1 in the division last year, 5-3 at home. And week 1, they play at the Rams. Sunday Night Football opener, opening the new Rams Stadium. This was hinted at for a while. I don't know if it leaked, but it wasn't a surprise to too many when this came out that Jerry Jones partially responsible for working behind the scenes to get his buddy Kroenke into Los Angeles and get that stadium. But 4th straight year that the Cowboys and Rams have played. Of course, the playoff game, C.J. Anderson runs amok on them.
Oh, God.
Yeah, I know. Sorry. Kevin's really distraught about this. John Fossil comes from the Rams special teams duties to the Cowboys. That was a huge need for them to address, so they steal him from L.A. But last year in Week 15, a big surprise win for the Cowboys. I'd forgotten this until I remembered it, right? Well, it got to be some kind of Yogi Berra quote. But when I look back at the schedule last year, remember how that was not that they beat the Rams, but just the way that they did it Week 15 last year. So I don't know how y'all want to do it, but any thoughts opener against the Rams? Anything that you first thought of when you saw that on the schedule?
Well, I think the Rams are definitely on the downslope, and even more so. And I thought it'd be a win for the Cowboys. I'm pretty convinced. And Vegas agrees with me. The Cowboys are 3-point favorites on the road in the new stadium for the Rams. So Vegas must be pretty hot on the Cowboys on this. Usually the home team gets 3 points when it comes to figuring odds. So if they were at home, the Cowboys would be a 6-point favorite.
Josh, outside of the dog just attacking you with licks, what do you think?
It's actually a cat.
Okay, sorry.
The sandpaper licks.
Yeah. My first thought on the Rams would be extra home game for the Cowboys because that's going to be in LA where they don't have any fans.
Yeah,
and
good point.
You're going to get the real Cowboys and the bandwagon Cowboy fans there. That is going to make the opening of that stadium kind of a fiasco for the Rams, especially if they don't win. So that'd be fun to watch just because I guarantee, I mean, I watched the teams that went into LA last year, the Eagles, I forgot who else went in there, but it was just a disaster for the home teams, and it's going to be the same thing. I would assume that they kind of did them a favor by getting the Cowboys in there to get the big national thing, but it's going to be a Cowboy home game to start it off on the road.
Yeah, I didn't think about it from that perspective. That's why we got 3 guys on here, but that's another look at it. You remember those Raiders games? Yeah, obviously, having camp out there, that's one of the big motivations for having camp there, I guess a little north of that LA area. But yeah, that's another home game for them. And again, right now, it might go without saying, but I don't think I mentioned it specifically earlier. We're not necessarily going to give you an exact record. I think we'll sprinkle in some record predictions, but I thought so much can change before the start of the season. If you hear, hey, why aren't they predicting wins? Well, one, everybody does it. I thought a more creative way would just be to kind of talk about the nuances and the trends of the schedule. But anyway, maybe that's boring old no fun JP. But in week 2, the home opener against the Falcons, Atlanta adds Todd Gurley in the offseason. Matt Ryan is still Matt Ryan. You can take that comment for however you want. But Dan Quinn, all accounts, is on the hot seat. Falcons were 7-9 last year, but they won their last 4 games. So week 2, home opener against the Falcons. Kevin?
I'm just praying for not 7 sacks.
Oh my gosh, that's the first thing I thought of when I saw that
game.
Yeah.
I think the Cowboys win, but the not 7 sacks. The Todd Gurley should be an interesting thing with Atlanta. I'm kind of excited to see that and see how it turns out. But I think the Cowboys will win that. It'll be the home opener. It'll be nice. That's one of those noon games. They'll probably stay there. And I think, yeah, as long as we don't give up. And, since we got a new head coach, we shouldn't have a guy on the sideline sitting there going, well, I mean, surely the backup will stop him one of these times. We don't need to adjust anything to help.
That's Josh's big gripe of the Jason Garrett era, the lack of adjustments, right, Josh?
Exactly how many times you saw the same exact thing happen, where about after the first quarter of a game, I'd text you and be like, well, we've seen this before. We know how it's going to go. And exactly so. My nightmares, they show up in week 1 or 2 and have one of those disaster games where you're like, well, maybe it wasn't all Jason Garrett, but you would think they'd avoid that against the Falcons. Just I don't think they're very good. With Gurley, it might make them better, but should be a game that I just don't see a whole lot of extra intrigue in there. I mean, and the NFL must know something to have that as the Cowboys. I don't remember the last time they had a home opener at 12 o'clock. Mm-hmm. Usually it's on Monday night football, or not Monday, but Sunday night football, or at least the 3:25 window. So just at a first glance, you wouldn't think that would be a big disaster game for them.
Week 3, Cowboys at Seattle. I do not feel good about this one, but the last meeting was the Cowboys' last playoff win. Now 2 seasons ago, boys, but I mean, I don't know everything about every team, but still poised to be another good Seattle team when you got Russell Wilson at quarterback. They were 11-5 last year. They made the playoffs in 7 of his 8 years at quarterback. And I don't know if y'all saw, but there were some whispers that came out in the last week that he was floated in a trade possibility a while back to the Browns. But that's one of those, and I'm going to break all of them down here in a little bit, and piece by piece, I guess, too. But they're not winning at Seattle. I'll guarantee it now. I'm not a betting man. They're not winning at Seattle.
If it's not a full stadium, they have a lot better chance because one of the big home field advantages of Seattle is the crowd and the noise. And with this, it's almost certainly won't be as crowded as it would be normally. So that's a huge advantage. That messes up offenses and things like that. I think it'd be a lot more level playing ground than usually when you go to Seattle, especially in a big game, because this should be considered a very big game.
Good point. Josh?
Do they get to pop in their own noise, like make it as loud as possible for the?
That's a good question.
Because I didn't even think of that being at Seattle would possibly.
It's normally against the rules to do that, and certain teams have been caught doing that as well, and they have been punished in some minor fashion. But it would be cool if they changed that for this. That'd be all right.
Yeah,
that'd be great if like places like Seattle could pump it in really loud, but then the bad fan bases, they just got to have like a little roar to make it realistic.
At the Cowboys, you could only make the noise loud when you're on offense. See, that's true. That's how they do it in Dallas.
The wine and cheese crowd that comes to the Cowboys games. Yeah,
accurate.
I know they are talking about that. The NBA. I heard some tidbit about that if the NBA ever gets off its hiney and puts some kind of plan into place about coming back, they talked about like piping in some crowd noise in the NBA. But anyway, this is not an NBA podcast. Here you go. Week 4 against the Browns, back at home. Baker Mayfield, Myles Garrett, both coming close to home. All the makings of a trap game, even that early in the season. I don't know if y'all agree on that, but the Browns are no trap game even against the Browns.
No, because I think they'll probably lose against Seattle. I mean, I have them. That's one of their losses. I have a Seattle. So
wait! Stop the phone. Hold the phone. You have a loss on their schedule?
Yeah,
I am floored.
I'm realistic. Try to be realistic. Although I really think Seattle's probably a 9-7 team, but I think they'll probably win this one early against Dallas. A little kind of a check against Dallas early, and then the Cowboys going to be looking ahead to New York and the Cardinals. I mean, I don't think they'll be looking past Cleveland.
That's fair.
Should be hopped up.
Okay. And
it's Cleveland. They're terrible. They're always terrible. I will never. I've gotten excited about them before in the past, and it's just been proven wrong. Just go with the standard. I grew up, they were terrible. When I was younger, they were terrible. And now they will just crush all your hopes and dreams and still be terrible. So until 10 years goes by where that's not the case, Cleveland sucks.
Yeah, dumpster fire of an organization. New head coach, though. Things do change quickly. To kind of play annoying devil's advocate guy to you. Things do flip around. And that goes without saying here, a quarter way through breaking down the schedule. But there will be 3 of these teams that just are not what you think at all, right?
At least, yeah.
And then of the teams that made the playoffs last year, there will be some that do not make it and were not even close to being contenders. So anyway, but they were 6-10 last year. But I think Baker Mayfield a lot to prove. And, yeah, I think that's one of my lock wins of the season, but Josh, I didn't want to ignore you there. What do you think? Anything about the Browns? Enlighten us with some Browns hot sports opinions. What do you think?
I've been to Cleveland before.
Okay, so there you go. 1 out of 3 of us.
They're on national TV like once every 5 years, so don't have just a whole lot to add outside of what y'all say. If Dallas does lose that, there might be problems. So let's hope that they're winning that one, because if Dallas is losing to Seattle and then Cleveland, and I prefer to be positive right now. So I'll assume a Browns win, but we've seen enough, or a Cowboys win on that day. But we've all seen enough to know not to be shocked by them losing to some dumpster fire of an organization.
Yeah. Jets.
Yes, exactly. They lost to the Jets last year. So.
Yeah, and let's all assume
about the same spot, wasn't it?
Yeah. A little bit later, I think, but yeah.
Week 5 or 6. Yeah.
And let's assume they're not tanking for Trevor Lawrence, okay? Would that be a funny opinion to come and just if they lose to the Browns, they got to be tanking.
Cowboys or Browns.
Very good.
If you're going to tank for somebody, you probably shouldn't sign some of the biggest contracts in the NFL for the 2 or 3 years leading up to your tank year. See, that's well,
some fans don't get that anyway. Week 5. See, podcasts are fun. Cowboys podcasts especially, but week 5, Cowboys stay at home and play the Giants. Their first divisional game doesn't come until week 5. Not coincidental. Some things I heard in another podcast I listened to, because of the pandemic and the possible need to reschedule, they tried to push off the division games for as long as possible. If, like I said leading off this, if they do bump it back a couple of weeks, they have that. But week 5 against the Giants, also the return of the offensive genius, the man behind so many great tepid Cowboys offenses in the past. Jason Garrett returns as OC of the New York Football Giants. Strike fear, shivers down the spine, Kevin, even here in May.
No. It should probably be what every other team said about us, the most predictable offense in football. Isn't that what we heard year after year? Me and my rose-colored glasses going, oh, that's sour grapes. You don't know what you're talking about, blah, blah, blah. But it got sledgehammered into my skull enough times. There you go. I'm on the train.
The other 2/3 of the podcast is as well, right, Josh?
Yes, but on another note, what am I missing? Why did the Giants hire him as an offense coordinator? I mean, they got an up-close look at it for the last several years, and the Cowboys were pretty good against the Giants. But, I mean,
maybe they're looking for a few more high draft picks, so they want to suck.
It wasn't just us that are seeing what we've seen the last few years, and the Giants are like, man, we got to get us some of that.
Well, he's OC now, and that is a difference. He could go back to offensive coordinator, and if he's able to run his stuff with the right head coach, in the right situation, he could probably have some success. So, and he's got some loyalty and some ties in New York. So I assume that's what it was. But I am surprised he has a job. I'm there with you, Josh. I'm just trying to. I mean, there's like a kernel of logic in there, I guess, is what I'm saying.
Yeah, you beat me to that, Kevin, because if you were going to tell me when you knew he was getting fired those last few games, we thought, although they did draw it out for the first six weeks of the offseason, it felt like. I would not have been surprised that he goes to New York with his ties to that area. His dad was a longtime scout of that organization. He was a former quarterback there right after his Cowboys playing days.
He was OC there, too.
And he had a coaching stint there before. He might have been quarterback's coach, but if you say he's OC, I'll trust you on that because
I believe he was OC. I think that we hired him. Well, you're right. Maybe he was quarterbacks and he got the promotion to OC here. Maybe that's what it was. Yeah, but you're probably right.
Eli Manning is out as the Giants quarterback. The Daniel Jones era began, I guess, in earnest last year, but he will be the guy. Do you know the two backup quarterbacks for the Giants? I was looking at this right before, at least on the roster right now. Not fair because I looked them up. They both have Texas ties.
Quarterbacks.
There's a hint. They both have ties to the great state of Texas.
One was what's his face from UT?
Vince Young. No.
No.
Colt McCoy, yeah.
Colt McCoy.
But Cooper Rush is also on the roster.
Oh, that's right.
Oh, yeah, that's right. That's right. As soon as we cut him, Jason Garrett was like, "Oh, you got to snatch up that ginger. Us soulless ones must band together."
The most Jason Garrett.
The way to success is to get all these former Cowboys busts.
Anyway,
it worked out so well for us.
So moving on, week 6 against the Cardinals, Monday Night Football. Coach Bro and teeny tiny itty bitty Kyler Murray come to town. But the former schoolboy legend at Allen won 3 state titles in that building, Jerry World, AT&T Stadium. But these are the big boys. This is another one of my lock games that, as Josh joked earlier, there's something tremendously wrong if they don't win this one against but this probably is more of a trap game than the other one I had mentioned earlier against the Browns. But the 4th home game in the first 6 games of the season. And on the surface, again, you think this would be a win, but an old division rival and had weird games against the Cardinals. You go back in Cowboys folklore, even back in the 90s in the playoffs. But
even in that Jerry Maguire movie, there was a weird Cowboys Cardinal.
Yeah. I mean,
remember that? Yeah. It's legendary. He got shown the money.
That's right. That was one of the Show Me the Money games.
Yeah.
It was.
Josh, any Cardinals thoughts? Rod Tidwell? Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't think we were going to be breaking Rod Tidwell down, or Jerry Maguire. That's just where we are. Cardinals, no.
Perfect.
I would assume the Cowboys should win that one, but Kyler Murray's good if he's not in 2 pieces at the time. But I mean, another one like you said. If they lose that one, then that should be another fun week of Dallas radio talk. So
I hear a lot of people really high on the Cardinals, and I know they got DeAndre Hopkins now, and he's good with
thank you, Houston Texans
quarterbacks. Yeah, and that's that man's a beast. He's a fantastic player. I think he should go in the Hall of Fame, and he deserves a Super Bowl win. So maybe he'll be a Cowboy one day. But I
like how you just threw that in there.
Yeah, the one thing that the Cardinals could be is that now I don't expect them to be that good yet. I do think they're on the rise. But it's yet to be seen just how far they can rise. However, when you talk about those surprise teams, like you mentioned a while ago, I don't think the Cardinals could be one of those.
Mm-hmm.
I think they have the pieces in place to be one of those if they have a weaker schedule, if they catch some teams by surprise. They could be one of those surprise really good teams and drop them off. I mean, DeAndre Hopkins can change a game by himself, and if Kyler Murray progresses at all. But like you said, Josh, if he's not broken.
Do you have the line on that one? I know you mentioned it for the very first one against the Rams.
I don't. I think they've only released the ones for the first, first week.
I'm no fun, no gambling guy because I can't because of my daytime job. But, okay. So I think, they'd probably be favored, but
Cowboys by 6.5.
There you go. Josh is good.
I have no idea.
He's got hidden talent, Kevin. You'll learn that.
I'll bet a touchdown or so.
So week 7, Cowboys are in our nation's capital at Washington, a noon kick. The first road divisional game comes in the last game of October. Ron Rivera now, the head coach at the Redskins, coming from Carolina, but that'll be weird to get used to. Last decade, here's a nugget for you. Stole it from the Cowboys website. But the last decade at FedEx Field, Dallas is 7-3. So don't want to lock down a win there, but Cowboys noon game at Washington, gents. First, Josh, let's switch it up. What do you think about them Redskins?
Not a lot, but that's one of the division rivals that I don't even know how to explain it because they're not good. But it seems like at least once every year they give the Dallas at least a really tough game. And being at Washington, that 12 o'clock window, that's not one that I would just say they show up and roll out for a win. It's one they should win. But, that's just divisional road games. Like even the Giants can be kind of tricky sometimes when it's up there. And obviously the Eagles are going to be a tough one. But that one, the start of the Redskins and Eagles back-to-back on the road, you'd think, I don't really believe in the look ahead for the NFL, but that one won't be as easy as we think. But we should win. Not sure when we will.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think you always have to watch out for those division rivalry games, especially the Redskins. But I kind of do. If there were a trap game from this point on the schedule, I think this might be one of those. It's really, like you said, the look ahead factor and that big of a deal, and I think it's less, if at all, a factor for division games, division rivalries. But still, looking ahead to that Sunday night game against the Eagles, that's all anybody's going to be talking about because the Cowboys will be such a clear favorite over the Redskins. They'll be going, yeah, they'll take care of the Redskins this week, and then next week, if they win this, they'll have won 7 in a row or whatever they say, And so that does have some of the traditional makings of a trap game like you were talking about, JP.
The big wonder is the quarterback situation in the offseason. Dwayne Haskins, he came on late last year. Is he the quarterback, or is Kyle Allen the quarterback? I was just reminded of that looking at their depth chart coming in. But, yeah, with a new head coach, you never know how they respond coming into but a rivalry game. Like you said, they know each other so well, all the divisional opponents. And even though you have different coaching staffs going against each other, a lot of the same personnel there. But here you go. Week 8, gents, at Philly, Sunday night. And this back-to-back road divisional games, they open November in the absolute worst city in the world, the worst fan base in the world, against, unfortunately, a well-run franchise. It didn't all sync up, as of late at least, for Philly. But Cowboys lost the division in Week 16 last season at the Link. In their first, sorry, I spit facts at you. Our second shoulder shrug and deep head dive for Kevin there. But anyway, Week 8 they play at Philly. Kevin's still crying for some reason, Josh. Any thoughts on them Eagles?
That's one that's always tough. They'll have, last year they beat the Dallas with nobody healthy besides Wentz. Like,
that's right.
The entire team was healthy. The Cowboys were pretty healthy. And after the Cowboys beat them by 30-something points or whatever it was at home, where the Cowboys should have been the better team, they had better players. Everybody knew the Eagles weren't going anywhere. Of course, they knew the Cowboys weren't going anywhere too. But
nobody could catch the ball, and Jason Garrett. That's the story of that game right there.
That is true. That very true. I remember there's been, usually when you think of playing at Philly, it's a bunch of frustrating games, and maybe none more so than that, just because you could have salvaged at least that whole wasted season. Although maybe that took any chance away from Garrett being rehired, so maybe they did us a little bit of a favor there. But that'll be a tough one.
Kevin, are you okay now?
I normally each year when I make my predictions, me and a friend of mine usually make our predictions, and then we put like $5 on it for the season or whatever. And normally I split with division rivals if they're even half good. Mm-hmm. So I haven't had to do that with the Giants or the Redskins for the past 3 or 4 years. So I normally split with Philly, and I usually say we win our home games. our respective home games, because the records kind of don't matter as much. If the team's half good, they have a good chance of winning, even if you're doing real good and the other team's terrible. It's division rivalry, et cetera, et cetera. But I've switched it this year because this will be I have the Cowboys winning that game, because I figure week 8 is going to be about the time that Carson Wentz goes out for his first 2 to 3 weeks out for the season.
Yeah, he'll have a couple of those.
Yeah, they'll have a rookie quarterback in there. I think he'll throw 3 or 4 picks with our new defense, a little more aggressive. The Cowboys will get that win there on the road on Sunday night.
Okay. I like the optimism. And yes, one of the reasons for getting Jalen Hurts in there is he could provide some of that relief for Carson Wentz, who does seem to be walking wounded a lot in Philly. But week 9 against the Steelers, only Pittsburgh's second trip to AT&T Stadium against the Cowboys. Or maybe that was actually figuring in the Super Bowl against the Packers and Mike McCarthy. But Big Ben clearly on the downside of his career. Murmurs lately about him not grinding, history of being injured. But this game goes into the bye. So that's another thing to focus on looking at a schedule. You get the Steelers going into the bye at home, and more on the Vikings in a little bit, but you're going to Minnesota coming out of, excuse me. Scratch all that. You go to Minnesota going into the bye. If I typed that correctly, I might have gotten, y'all have the full breakdown?
No. You had it right.
Okay.
Yeah.
Confused myself there. That's what felt right, but then I got the numbers off on my little iPad here. But
and that's if the buys hold at these positions too.
That's true.
But we'll see. But for now.
So you have a Super Bowl 30 rematch, at least of the most recent Super Bowls with the Cowboys and Steelers. Kevin, first up, what do you think?
I actually put this down as a loss for the Cowboys, just as I think this is one of the ones the Cowboys will lose that they should. One of it's the rivalry, and one of it is looking ahead into the bye, or maybe floating too high after that win over Philly. And Pittsburgh can always beat you, I think. But I don't know, they're not near as strong as they were. Now, last year is an aberration. So it's one of the things is it's incredibly hard to tell what Pittsburgh is going to be this year. Roethlisberger can always be good. He'll be a veteran. Juju Smith-Schuster, he was injured most of last year, and he had terrible quarterback play, backing him up. James Conner was injured some too, but then they had these amazing offensive plays with backup running backs and stuff. So they got a great coaching staff there in Pittsburgh that they can make up a lot of deficits when they lose their talent. So if their talent's in place, they're going to be dangerous. So I hate to say it. Let's see. Maybe I just put it down because if they lose, I can say, well, I called it. But if they win, I can go, well, we won. Yay. That's it. That way, it's the only way I can win on that day, I guess.
Now you're getting into my philosophy, how I just talk myself down and lower the expectation so I can be happy with any win. Oh, you win 8? Oh, that's, yay. Or you win 10 games. Oh, that's 2 more than I thought you would. Anyway, Josh, any Steelers thoughts, or do you care one way or the other?
They're a good organization. They're one that you can almost guarantee they're not just going to come out and be terrible. I mean, last year with the Antonio Brown fiasco, Roethlisberger hurt, everybody out, they still, 8-8 or 9-7? They were still right there beside a playoff berth. So even if they're down, they're going to be good. So that'll be a tough one. Plus the fact, if I remember right, the Steelers last time they came to Dallas, it was like a 60% Steelers crowd because they're just crazy.
Yes.
And so, well, I guess that's a caveat again of there might not be fans, but that's one you definitely can't just put in the win column, and that'll be, going into the bye week. Just sometimes you have to not playing as well. Hopefully, you would think with McCarthy they wouldn't have that, being ready to be off already. But that's gonna be a tough one.
All right. Looking after the Steelers, they have the aforementioned off week. Good time to have that game at the Vikings, coming off the bye. Dallas, though, only 5-5 after the bye the last decade. Again, not to beat the Jason Garrett Pinata anymore. He's out the window. Wish him well, except against the Cowboys, and I guess to fail as an organization, but still nothing against him as a guy. He seemed like a nice guy, but that's the other thing. They just never seem like they had that oomph coming after a bye. But McCarthy was 9-4 after the bye week when he was with the Packers. And I don't know why this one jumped out at me so much, but this is another one of those, and you may be looking at back-to-back. I mean, you think you've got at Philly, then you've got the Steelers. Y'all both have admitted that'll be a tough one. Then you go to the Vikings. Granted, the bye weekend, that's why this is such a good time to have it. But along with the Seattle one and then another one coming up, I just think they have zero shot to win at Minnesota. But again, as I've already described, I'm a negative Nancy when it comes to some of this, and I overthink it too much. But be a tough one at the Vikings. Going against Mike Zimmer, obviously, who has his Cowboys history too. Who wants
Yeah,
it?
they'll beat the Vikings.
Okay.
They'll beat the Vikings.
I would assume McCarthy's history against the Vikings is pretty good. I don't have the numbers there, but it seems like the Packers probably had beat them pretty well. But was it last year the Vikings just destroyed Dallas, or they're coming into Dallas one week? Maybe it was a couple of years ago. I don't know. But playing at Minnesota will be a tough one, but I don't usually just see them as world beaters that you don't have a shot against. Like you were saying, you just rack it up as a loss. So be a tough game, but it's a winnable one.
Yeah, no doubt. I know it's winnable. I just don't feel good about it. But maybe that doesn't help. I don't feel good about a lot of them.
Yeah, it's winnable, and it's tough. And I think that'll be a real telling game, too. If you beat the Vikings are a good squad. And last year we lost to them 28-24. They didn't beat us really bad. Or it may have been one of those comeback games. I don't remember a lot. I'm just looking it up. But
that was
Dak
right. That was the one where they got down. They got down the field and they had a chance to win, and then was that the one where they ran it a few times? All those losses kind of go together on me.
Yeah.
Seems like that was one where Dak was tearing them up, and then they got down there and decided they were going to hand the ball to Zeke, or is that another game I'm thinking of?
The other 14 games like that in the Garrett
I think
era.
there's so many that run together.
Dalvin Cook had 183 yards in that game.
That's right. That's right. So week 12, Thanksgiving against the Redskins, the way it should be. Or is that week 11? Again, I got my my numbers all backwards there, trying to be cute.
Yeah, it's the Redskins.
12.
Thanksgiving.
Yeah, Thanksgiving against the Redskins. So, yeah, what it was week 11 Vikings after the bye, and week 12 Thanksgiving against the Redskins, the way it should be. Get some pumpkin pie and watching that late game against the Redskins. And I guess I felt like it was more than the numbers say, but Cowboys are 8-1 all time in Thanksgiving games against the Redskins. I would have thought they played more than 9 times in Thanksgiving. It just seems like as a kid growing up, all right, Cowboys, Redskins, Thanksgiving.
It was 8-1. That's the one I went to, the RG3 game.
Yeah,
the
that's
RG3
right.
is the one they beat us. I was at that game. I have a friend who does work for the NFL Network, and he needed an extra boom operator because they were micing the away team's post game, which they didn't normally do. So I held a boom mic for that. So I got to see RG3 and hold a boom mic there, and I didn't smack him in the face with it, although he was a classy dude. He was just
Texas guy. Come on, man.
The devil destroyed him in his career. So, I guess he learned his lesson. I don't know. But anyway, still a decent guy. So I was there. I didn't know that, JP. That's it. I'm not going to a Cowboys game.
Because they'll lose.
Not an important one. Not in person. The other one I went to with you, JP, well, I've been to 2 other ones. One was on Christmas against the Eagles and Nick Foles, and we lost. And it wasn't the most recent one or whatever, but it was still in a Texas Stadium. I think it was last year at Texas Stadium. And then that Eagles game that I went to with you that was basically the single worst experience of my entire life.
Yeah, we've got to break that down.
A lot.
We've got 2 games.
Pickle game.
The pickle juice game.
Pickle juice game.
We'll tell the full story.
Lord.
This will be an advanced 5 or 6 month tease, but that's one of the funnier stories. And Kevin is a great storyteller, but he can break that down. Because remember, Aikman get knocked out
for the season, concussion.
Joey
Galloway tore his ACL.
Yes, I think Yeah, I know Joey Galloway.
We spent 2 first-round draft picks on him. And Deuce freaking Staley, who, by the way, went on for like 4 years to be one of the best running backs on Madden because of that one game where he had 200 and some odd yards, 67 yards or something like that. Deuce freaking Staley ran all over us. And after I came back from heat exhaustion in the bathroom because it was 197,000 degrees in the sun, came back to sit down, and we were sitting under the Eagles fan section, losing 34-8 or something.
Yeah, I'm sure no adult beverages led to that quote unquote heat exhaustion.
Not much. Not
by your
much.
standards.
Not by anybody's standards.
Anyway,
really. I mean, maybe 3 beers worth of alcohol.
I don't know how we got on to Deuce Staley from the playing the Redskins on Thanksgiving. I guess a loss because you said you went
because I was at that game and they lost to RG3, and that's it. I'm not going to another Cowboys game in person. Not one that matters. I'll go to a preseason game. I've been to some of those. That's fine.
All right. Well, good.
Not going to one that matters.
Good segue. Speaking of RG3, I just looked it up. He is actually on the Ravens roster. So week 13, The Cowboys are at the Ravens. RG3 backing up reigning MVP Lamar Jackson. That'll be an NFL Network game. A trend for the Cowboys the last few years. I was a stat nerd. I looked this up. But the league gives them a Thursday night game the week after Thanksgiving. I think the league ached and belly moaned for all those years, and instead of giving the Cowboys the traditional 11-day break and then either having another home game or home game before that, they stack the Thursday games. My understanding why they do that. But last year, Cowboys lost both the Thanksgiving game, remember that Buffalo game, and then the following Thursday at the Bears. But 2 years ago...
Oh, God. Man.
They won both. 2 years ago, they won both the Thanksgiving game against the Redskins and then the Saints. But then 3 years ago, they split. So this is the 4th year they've had the Thursday combo. I thought that was interesting. Once they got swept.
That is interesting.
Yeah. So who knows? I think that'll be a big part of the season. If you can win the Redskins game, then follow that up with a win at the Ravens, and then have the off week before the game at the Bengals in the Andy Dalton Bowl, that would be big. But can't wait. Can't freaking wait to see that game against the Ravens, week 13. What do you think, Josh? Don't let Kevin overpower you in his dramatic ways. Josh, what do you think?
Do you want to see RG3 or do you want to see the MVP candidate in that
Some
game?
redemption for Kevin. RG3 comes in. And the
Thursday
Cowboys...
night in Baltimore doesn't sound too like such a great night, at least after the year they had last year. But that will be a fun one. And I think the way they do it now, like you were saying, the Cowboys will play Thanksgiving and the Thursday after. And that also means the Ravens probably play somebody on Thanksgiving. I don't know. I'd have to look that up. But, yeah, that was the rest of the league griping about saying the Cowboys had the advantage. So what they do is they put the Cowboys on the Thursday after Thanksgiving, and they play somebody that played on Thanksgiving. So the Cowboys don't have that built-in advantage after it. And then they'll have the full week and a half to get ready for the Bengals. So that'll be that. I guarantee whatever station that is, Fox, they're going to love having that one because the Cowboys, and if the Ravens are anywhere close to what they were last year, it's just going to be a massive, massive rating.
Yeah, and
that game will be so much fun. It will be a lot of fun. I loved watching Baltimore last year, and I love what Lamar Jackson's doing. I hope they can keep it up. Now, I hope they lose this game, but that was a lot of fun, and it broke my heart when they got knocked out of the playoffs. Oh man, I didn't realize how much I cared for them to win. But
it'll be okay.
It's just really cool. There was just so much fun, and it is fresh, and it doesn't feel like a gimmick back when the Wildcat was running through the NFL. You remember that? It was going through and had seen some success. It feels less like a gimmick than it does like good coaching and good execution, and then the right talent to pull that out. It's really they've been a lot of fun to watch, and Jim Harbaugh is a genius, I think.
Yeah,
and great coach.
I'm so glad you mentioned that because I was listening to huge recommendation. Football nerds out there, John Middlecoff's podcast. He's on the Colin Cowherd podcast network, but he brought up Greg Roman being matched up. That Roman does this. Roman did it with Kaepernick I mean, Kaepernick, Lamar Jackson, not the same exact type of player, but he really elevated his game. And just having Greg Roman there to get Lamar Jackson with one of the top, I mean, after Bill Belichick, you have to go you don't go a long time before you find the next best head coach in the NFL. And John Harbaugh is that guy, I think. And he's just does a lot with a little compared to the Garrett era, who did a little with a lot. I think that's number one thing.
Yep.
Anyway, I still want to get to a lot of things, but these last 4 games, I mentioned leading into that Bengals game, the Andy Dalton Bowl, but the real advantage of having that Turkey Day game, extra rest going into the game, but they've won their last 3, 5 of their last 6 on that true built-in bonus bye. That makes sense? So after having that extra kind of half bye, and again, now with every team having a Thursday game, but just the Thanksgiving specific game coming after that extra bye. The Cowboys have won their last 3, 5 of their last 6, but Bengals obviously getting Joe Burrow, top pick, replacing Andy Dalton. They didn't wait long. I guess he was going to have a huge cap hit too, so they got rid of him. But I mean, how will he develop after a true off season? But Bengals, another terrible organization. But still, I think it'll be fun to see Joe Burrow. Always fun to see the number 1 pick and how he adjusts to life in the NFL, throwing against non-college defensive backs.
I have some extensive notes here on that game. It says LOL exclamation point with the W circle.
Which means Cincinnati wins by 21. Josh, any thoughts? After Kevin's extensive notes.
Do you think the Cowboys got Andy Dalton exclusively to have an advanced scouting report for this game, knowing the Bengals are on the schedule this year?
Hey, $3 million, pretty cheap contract. $3 million, I guess. Incentive $7 million.
I love it. We'll break that down later. But this is the ones I said earlier. The Cowboys have bigger problems than we know. If they lose the ones earlier, even on the road, if they lose to the Bengals in Week 14, I don't care where they are right then. That's going to be trouble. Not that I see a loss coming there, but even say you're 10-3 at the time or whatever, 10-2, a loss at Cincinnati could start a little bit of a spiral with the schedule left. Like I said, I'm not envisioning that, but that's one they better win.
Good segue there. Speaking of spiral, this is another one I just don't think they'll win. Not the Cincinnati one. This one here, Week 15 against the 49ers, Sunday night football game. We all know the stats about the team that loses the Super Bowl, struggles the following season. I just think, New England, San Francisco, Baltimore, hopefully the Cowboys again, the Packers, just the well-run organizations. I think San Francisco has it down. But outside of injuries, if they're as healthy as they can be, Nick Bosa, Jimmy Garoppolo, obviously, but 49ers team seems to be loaded. My years are going by. A 1995, I guess 96 actually, calendar year rematch, NFC Championship game. Kevin, your take, your hot opinion on this one.
Well, I don't think that San Francisco can repeat the defensive dominance they had last year, and Garoppolo got kind of exposed in the Super Bowl. So I have it down as a loss because until I see otherwise, you have to assume that San Francisco is going to have one of the most dominant defenses in the NFL, and that team, and it doesn't matter how exposed their quarterback is, has a good chance of winning any game they play in. So I have it as an L, but at this point, it wouldn't surprise me at all for the Cowboys to win that. And if the San Francisco defense winds up being, 9th, 10th, or mediocre, something like that, I don't think their offense is good enough alone to win games. Josh, you mentioned a spiral too. If you lose that Bengals game, you're looking at Baltimore and then a surprise loss of the Bengals and then San Francisco. You talked about that spiral right there, and that's happening. The Eagles are after that. That's possibly too. That is the kind of thing talking about. That's just bringing more, to your point about that Bengals game where it looks like an easy win, but it's actually a very, very important game, even looking at it here early.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's one where, the 49ers, we're talking about quarterbacks, but didn't they win the NFC title game by throwing like 8 times or something?
Yeah.
ridiculous like that.
This crazy run game, which also I don't think you can replicate 2 years in a row.
Now, the 49ers should be good, but it's NFL, so you just don't know. Looking at it now, I'd say the Cowboys would lose that game, but you never know what's going to happen in 6 weeks. I would not be stunned to see the 49ers start 3-3 or something like that. They're good. I don't think they're world beaters, but as long as they've got the defense, if the defense is as good as they think it will be, then they'll be right there. Like Kevin was saying, if they're around number 10 or whatever, then they're not going to be the unstoppable force. But yeah, a tough game in December, right before Christmas on Sunday night game.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, that'll be a lot of fun right before Christmas, especially for ratings wise. Once again, like I was saying with the Ravens and putting the Cowboys and the Ravens and the 49ers later, the Eagles next week. So should be another fun one.
Yeah, 4 of the last 5 games have at Ravens against the 49ers and then 2 divisional games against the Eagles and Giants late in the year. But week 16 against the Eagles last year, talked about this earlier, hold your ears, Kevin. But last year, Dallas crapped the bed in that game that came down to the division in week 16. As Josh said, rightfully so, that really was finally the end of the Jason Garrett era, I think, unofficially, officially. But this year, the late Philly game comes at home. Not surprisingly, they flip it. But you get a feeling this season will come down to this. Even last year, there was that 3, 4, 5 week stretch leading up to that game. You're like, it's coming down to that game. Like, Josh, we did all that.
Everybody lost for a month straight.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the Eagles won with everybody on their roster in the hospital.
Yeah. And the Cowboys never win. They never won games like that in the Jason Garrett era. Now, that's what I always belly moaned about. And then the whole infamous quote from Jerry Jones, Foles isn't an option. And then Foles goes out, the next year, 2 years, and then wins the Super Bowl for Philly, the oft-injured Carson Wentz.
Did you know a bit of Eagles trivia here? Did you know that Carson Wentz has played 4 snaps in a playoff game and completed 1 pass in his career?
Wow.
That was last year when he got knocked out in, I guess, the first series of the game on offense for him. And then their backup took over again. That was last year. That's the only time he's even entered a playoff game.
Here's what I'll say about Carson Wentz. I want to root for him so bad. I don't. But he's a North Dakota guy. North Dakota State, the dad's alma mater. So I would love it if he was on any organization, but in the worst city in America with the worst fan base in America, and unfortunately a pretty well-run organization anyway. But that's the Eagles game. Week 17 at the Giants, the Jason Garrett rematch. Jason Garrett will be looked to be the spoiler. This comes down to the very end. You think that game will have a lot on the line? And are the Cowboys going for a sweep against the Giants, a split, or trying to avoid being swept? What do you think? I guess we all agreed they'd win the first one, right?
Yeah, I think it'd be the sweep. And actually, I have the Cowboys losing to the Eagles because by that point, they'll already have wrapped up the NFC East crown. And so Andy Dalton will lose to the Eagles. Maybe Dak will play a little, and then Andy Dalton is going to come in and beat Jason Garrett. It's going to be Ginger versus OC Ginger. Quarterback Ginger versus OC Ginger in New York. Andy Dalton's going to beat that Giant squad, and we'll take a win into the playoffs.
Josh, I don't even bother with him anymore. I don't know. No, I'm going to retract. I don't want to do 16 podcasts during the season with you. Okay? Let's do one a week.
He's envisioning the season going slightly better than I am.
Yes. Josh, you'll get to know this about your new good friend, Kevin, and my longtime friend, Kevin.
It's just got to go really terrible for the Eagles. See, that's all.
Okay. I wouldn't be surprised if this game didn't mean anything one way or another, whether it's good or bad. Because playing the Eagles in week 16, I think it's going to probably make this game, if anything, more about playoff seeding rather than anything. So, but that would be awesome if it's Andy Dalton. Let's just hope it would be a good reason for Andy Dalton to be out there, not that they packed in the season or Dak's hurt. Let's hope they're resting Dak for the playoffs, and then they can put Dalton out there and one way or another be fine going in. But I like Kevin's thinking. I need to listen to this more. Like, he should be able to give us pep talks every week before we go have our taco bueno eventually. That way,
there we
be
go.
much more happier mood.
Oh, I love his thinking too, but it's just usually not accurate. That's the only.
Hey now.
Hey, time will tell. We'll make our predictions.
It's as accurate as yours and happier.
Yeah, that's true. You do have more fun, Kevin. So, again, I already said I'm not big, hot take, got to give me a record now guy. But we might do that before the season and put something on the line. Like Kevin has to grow his hair out down to his knees, or I don't know. I'll do something.
Oh, my God, you are asking for the impossible. Yeah, how about if I just have to get a weave?
Okay, we can do that. Just get a wig. But if you are listening this long into it, and you say, I've got to have a prediction now. Well, here's how I broke it down. I broke it down into 4 parts of the season, broke it up into quarters, went through it twice, rapid fire, and then looked at it in this quarters method. So I came up with the same thing. They go 3-1 in the first quarter of the season. I can talk myself up from 2-2. So no fun JP is having fun, and he's saying they win 3 of those first 4 games. The Browns game a layup, as we already discussed. In the next quarter of the season, they go 3-1. They're 1 loss at Philly in that stretch. You'll have your time, equal time coming. You'll have your time, sir. So that obviously gets them out to a 6-2 start. But then the most important segment of games, and I've heard this is how the NFL teams do it. They break it down into 4-game segments. But that key quarter of the season, at that 3-quarter, I guess right after the halfway point of the season numerically, got the Steelers, the Vikings, and the Ravens. All too tough in there. So I think they lose 3 of those 4 games. And the last 4, again, you could talk me into 3-1, but I went 2-2 because I gave you the 3-1 to the first 4 games. But the Bengals and the Giants games should be wins of the last 4 games. But what? You got the 49ers mixed in there. And then I don't think they beat both the Eagles and the Giants. So I think they lose that Eagles ones. With a final prediction, if you can do your elementary math, Josh, Kevin, you know this too, but sky is the limit for me. 9-7 for the Cowboys. My initial prediction.
I think you're nuts. First of all, you just said the Eagles will sweep the Cowboys.
Did I?
Yes.
Yeah, I guess that home game. Well, not too crazy. Last year they won 5 of their division games, so it would be crazy if they go 4-2. I mean, I think that would have them at 4-2 in the division. Huh?
And they didn't sweep them last year, and the Cowboys annihilated them in one game.
So what do you think?
I think you got to give them one more win there, and then I have them beating the Vikings. So I'm 11-5.
Okay, Joshua.
I think you stole my homework because I had originally told you 9-7 whenever you gave out whatever record you did, but I refuse to go exactly what you did, so I'll go 10-6.
Okay. Yeah,
I won't break it down.
Split with the Eagles. That's more reasonable.
I was actually looking through because I hadn't put together a record, and I just kind of scanned it while y'all were making y'all's predictions, and 10-6 is what came across. So who knows? But I'll go with that.
So you've got 11-5.
I think that Vikings and Steelers, I think they lose one of those games, but I don't think they lose both of them. So I gave them the Vikings because it's after the bye.
Is it safe to say?
Whoops. Get to you in a second, Florio. So what difference, here's another big quote or question before we go into the Dak and Dalton talk, but what difference will Mike McCarthy make? Looked up these nuggets here, but 5 of the Cowboys' 8 losses were by a touchdown or less last year. Remember, they lost by 4 at the Patriots, 4 at the Eagles. Third time we've referenced that with the division on the line. And 2 each, 1 at the Ding Dong Jets, and then lost by 2 at the Saints. All 4 of those on the road. So if McCarthy can come in, maybe there is. Again, I'm hopeful for Kevin's 11-5 or better prediction. But if McCarthy can make that kind of difference just in those close losses, that's something Garrett really could never do outside of the 12-4 2014 team.
I think that was all on Garrett because here's the deal. That's incredibly bad luck. No team does that. No team loses that high of a percentage of games that close. It almost never happens. It was incredibly bad luck. or incredibly bad coaching. I think it was both. It was bad luck and bad coaching, which equaled both of those.
Mm-hmm.
I think if you fired Garrett at Thanksgiving, they make the playoffs. They beat the Eagles or win one more game down the stretch. That's one thing. You factor in all the things, not just that Garrett was terrible and not whatever, but the sentiment around the locker room. Everybody was feeling like losers because they were losing every single close game.
Mm-hmm.
And that doesn't really happen in the NFL.
But it was so crazy. The other end of that stat, they were so much the front-running team, and which is crazy. I mean, we had our draft show, which I loved. I love this show we're doing right now. But it reminded me of this. All 8 of the Cowboys' wins last year, they scored 31 points or more. Obviously, I don't follow other teams as close as I do the Cowboys, but just process that. They could not win the low-scoring games. As we said, they had the close losses, but they averaged 17 points per game in those 8 losses. The 8 wins almost doubled that. But you've got a new DC, Jim Tomsula. He's obviously got some work to do in the secondary, and you don't know about linebacker depth. They're doing better on the defensive line, although you don't know if Alden Smith. But anyway, that's for another pod. But I just think with those big changes, maybe the perpetual 8-8 team that this was under Garrett, maybe you're 10-6. Breaks right, the schedule. You never know about injuries for your team. You never know about injuries for the other team. Maybe you are 11-5 after this. So I think in that 9-7, 11-5 window, like we have, that doesn't surprise me. Thoughts?
I have one hypothetical for you. You mentioned him earlier. If Jim Harbaugh were the Dallas Cowboys head coach last year, what do you think their record would have been?
And you mean Michigan Jim Harbaugh, not John Harbaugh at Baltimore, who already praised, right?
Oh, sorry, Baltimore. Yeah.
Okay. I'm just making sure. I kind of knew what you meant.
I'm sorry. I think I said Jim earlier, too.
Yeah. We knew what you meant.
John Harbaugh.
I mean, that changes everything. It would change the staff. You'd obviously have a different scheme.
No, literally.
But
just John Harbaugh.
Okay. Then I'd say, I mean, you're 10-6, at least 11. I mean, you're in our current ballpark.
So they win 2 more games.
Yeah, I think
so. They win the division.
A
and
great
they make
coach
the playoffs.
is worth 2 games, and as bad as the NFC East was last year, yes, he makes that big of a difference in the close loss late to Philly, and those other really close losses. So,
I think they're at least 11-5, if not 13-3. I think they win at least half of those close games, if not more than half, with a good head coach.
So one thing on our last pod that I said was a glaring omission was the still huge need for a reliable backup quarterback. And presto, they got it done. Andy Dalton signs a 1-year, $3 million contract a couple weeks back. And I try to get these specifics of the incentives, but it could be worth it. Hopefully it's not a $7 million contract. I don't think Andy Dalton's a team that comes in here. And as much as we kid each other about Dak, Kevin, I mean, Dalton's clearly not a threat to Dak. And this isn't a flex by the Cowboys, but with the incentives, their playing time incentives, and if they make the playoffs, that could go up to $7 million. But you got a guy that's well over 500 in his career, 3-time Pro Bowler, over 60% of his passes. That's not a huge note in the NFL. Most guys complete over 60%.
Not these days. Yeah, not these days. Yeah.
But I just think I was so happy when they got that done because, like we said, you don't want to be trying to get Cooper Rush in Week 15 if Dak goes down with a bum ankle and can't play the next 2 games, playoffs on the line. And you don't feel good about that. So I was really happy getting Dalton on there. Took a bit of a discount coming back close to his college home, comes back to his home state. He's from Katy near Houston. So I was really, really happy about Dalton. But I don't think he's anywhere near competing with Dak. I know there's that theory floating out that there's no chance that he goes in and wins that job or over Dak, or that they sign Dalton as a threat, like an ultimatum to Dak. I don't think that's true at all either.
Yeah, that's the only thing I dislike about the Dalton signing is all the Dak haters going, all right, cut Dak. Brr, 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 brr. Like, shut up. I think it speaks to a point in our last football podcast. You said, it was like, what are the 2 most important positions on the football team, the quarterback and the backup quarterback. Mm-hmm. And I think it speaks to being serious about winning and having that backup plan, having a guy that with the other talent on this team can still go in and win the games that you should win. and not look too bad in the games you shouldn't win. The team won't be as good, but he can come in there and service. He could win a playoff game. I mean, he really could. A little bit older, but not really old in terms of quarterbacks, but older than Dak for sure. So maybe as a backup, even towards the end of the season, he wouldn't be, tired and things like that. But yeah, I think it comes good. And then the bonus of him coming from the AFC division we play, that can't be anything but positive. It may be nothing, but it can't be anything but positive. And I think it's a great signing. I'm very happy about it. $900,000 more than Cooper Rush. And for that $7 million, like you're saying, I think what I heard is he would have to play over half of the regular season games and make it to the Super Bowl. Now, something like that. Like there's a bonus for every level of the playoffs that he makes. So basically, if Dak goes out for the season and the Cowboys win the Super Bowl, then he gets $7 million, and he should.
Yeah, pull the Nick Foles. Josh, what are your thoughts? What do you think?
I think it's great just because I think it's been absolutely insane that they have not had a backup quarterback for a few years. I mean, Dak fortunately has been healthy, but the last few years, can you imagine if Dak got hurt and they went with Cooper Rush for any amount of time? So for the cost of it, I really like it, having somebody that that if they go in there, it's not going to be an outright disaster. I mean, if you bring in Andy Dalton and he's got to play 4 games, you would assume they could at least win 2 of them to where keep your head above water, go 2-2, not be a disaster of going 0-4 and ruining the season. So I'll commit them to it while saying I just thought it was insane that it took them this long to come around to that thinking. But having Andy Dalton kind of fall into their laps, what anybody wants to say about him not being great the last few years in Cincinnati, in terms of a backup, it's about as good as you're going to get.
Yeah, he's got the Cincinnati exception for just being attached to that dumpster fire of an organization. But, Dak, he's obviously still the starter. Don't like those folks that even hint at the thought that this could be getting on, like Dez, our guy Dez, Josh. Dez hinted at such at a tweet with the Dalton signing, saying that they did that with Romo, even after Romo. They're 2 totally different situations, and even a different era from the Romo era. But that's another pod. But Dak obviously is not signed. He's under the franchise tag right now. March 15th, he got tagged for $31.4 million, if we could all have that problem. But the deadline for him to sign is July 15th on that franchise tag. Still no indication that he wouldn't sign the deal and pull a blanking, help me out, football guys, the Steelers guy that sat out for a year here recently.
Le'Veon Bell?
Le'Veon Bell, thank you. I just had a chasm in my brain for that name there. But with everything going on, reports that the cap could go down $70 to $80 million for 2021. This is massive. It seemed like Dak had the beginning leverage, but then it seems like the Cowboys kind of do too. And let's face it, the Cowboys always get it done. I have no fear that, one, Dak won't be the starting quarterback, but the Cowboys always get it done. For one thing, as much as we can rightfully criticize Jerry and a lot of things, they always get the guy that they want in this type of situation. Am I overstating it? Too bold of a statement there?
I mean, kind of they do, but I think over the past too often in this Dak thing really highlighted it and looking over it. I think that they're not getting the deals done soon enough, and so they're paying as much as they could possibly pay. They're not signed like they didn't sign Dak last year or even after his first year, because he was really cheap, 4th round rookie contract. You could have at least signed him to a, 2nd round quarterback rookie contract, giving him a raise right there, built some goodwill because he definitely played well enough, and then he was going to be your starter. And you could have still had him dirt cheap too, but now should have signed him last year. I think there was a tentative offer, but no serious negotiations because Dak wasn't really, he was like, hey, I'm good. We'll go next year, and then I'll have you behind the 8 ball. With the salary cap potentially going down, franchise tagging him this year, even worse of a deal, because if they had to do it again next year, first of all, you'll have 2 or 3 more top quarterback contracts be signed by next year. So Dak's price tag will go up. The market will go up considerably.
Yeah. Pat Mahomes, one of those. Yeah.
Yeah. and Deshaun Watson, probably going to be the first $40 million quarterback. And then Pat Mahomes, you're like, what is he going to be then?
50.
47,
Yeah.
45, 50? Yeah. Anyway, but the franchise tag would go up. Was it 20% or whatever? It would go up even more. And if the salary cap comes down, then Dak's percentage shoots way up for what their salary would be if they tag him this year. So I don't necessarily think Dak has lost any negotiating power. And I do think the thing is the number of years here is
No
really
doubt.
what they're hinging on.
He wants 4, the Cowboys want 5. Yeah.
And I think this is a bad decision by management right now. One, they already had one bad decision. They're going to have to pay Dak more than they probably should have had to pay him if they'd signed him sooner. And by waiting this long, from what I see in, like the Facebook, sports talk pages and stuff, this is not good for the fan base or stuff. This is creating antipathy and ill will towards your starting quarterback. Period. And that's not good. That's not a good thing. That's not going to sell Dak jerseys. That's going to do nothing but create chaos and all this stuff filtering in and distraction that's unnecessary. Just sign him. You know what you're going to sign him for. You know what your offer is. And if it didn't, then don't, and Dak could walk away. Hey, I have a hypothetical for you. Sorry, Josh. I know I've been going on a little bit, but I got an interesting hypothetical.
Get used to it, Josh.
For you after we get some of your input, Josh. I'll let you talk. Sorry.
Hey, one thing, Kevin, I know you know Josh a little bit. One thing to know, it doesn't bother him, Kevin, okay?
Oh, okay.
It doesn't bother him one bit.
I promise. I enjoy listening more than talking. I know I don't want to just sit here like a bump in the log, but in terms of Dak, I don't have a whole lot to add to what y'all said other than the fact they always pay these guys. Like, Zeke held out. They gave him at least as much, if not more, than he was asking anybody. Yeah. They always give him their money. And to Kevin's point, I don't know why they just didn't go ahead and do it already. Because if they wait long enough and wait for Mahomes to somehow get a pick, get a contract, then they're going to have to pay him even more than they would right now. So, being one that has paid attention to some of these, they always pay him, and they're going to pay him. It's just a matter: do they pay him next week? Do they pay him after franchise tag year? They pay him in training camp. It's going to happen, and they're going to pay him a lot of money. They're going to probably pay him as much as he wants, and it's just all a big waste of just putting him through the mud. I don't think they do it intentionally, but let all the stupid Cowboy fans that are saying Andy Dalton's going to come in and take his job.
Ridiculous.
No, he's not. And they're going to pay him his money, and it's going to happen. But we get to go through the whole Jerry Jones makes some comment at training camp where he says, we can win without him or whatever. And then fast forward to the season or next season, and he's got that contract. So that's pretty much all I got to say. But he's going to get paid.
Here's I wanted to get to this. Stephen Jones was on your boy Mike Florio's podcast, Josh. I know you miss Pro Football Talk, off podcast joke we've been making for years. But anyway, Stephen Jones on with Mike Florio on Pro Football Talk. And, of course, the Dak situation came up, and we were talking about the big amount of money. Here he is.
I mean, at the end of the day, I know everybody's out there, how have you not paid Dak? At the same time, Dak we've tried to pay him, and he has to accept what we want to pay him. But the deal's got to be right for Dak. It's got to be right for us. As you know, Mike, the salary cap makes this a zero-sum game for owners. This is not something where Jerry and myself are trying to save money so the Cowboys can make more money for the Jones family. We're just trying to do our very best, working with Mike, working with Will McClay to really divide up the pie in the best way possible to win a Super Bowl. There's all sorts of analytics out there that show if your quarterback takes up too big a percentage of your salary cap, that, it decreases your chances to win. So just trying to figure out the right fit. No one wants to sign Dak to a longer-term deal more than Jerry and myself. We're on the record time and time again on what we think of him as a leader. He has the it factor. He's a fierce competitor. He wants to win as well, and it's just got to be right for him and right for us. We'll continue to work to a conclusion on that.
So that's the big deal. they'll get it done, like we all agree.
Yeah.
But it's 5 years versus 4 years right now. Cowboys want that extra insurance, and Dak's camp wants 4 years so that he can make more money going into what? He would be 32 in 4 years.
Yeah. And that new TV contract. But look, those analytics, the only thing those analytics say is that Tom Brady's won a bunch of Super Bowls in the past 15, 20 years. And that if you get a surprise, awesome rookie quarterback that you totally didn't expect to be good, you might win a Super Bowl. That's the only thing those analytics say.
Well, like numbers guys have told me, you can make stats say whatever you want, I mean, it is relative. And a lot of that is to do with Brady recently taking the low money before going down south to Tampa Bay. But
he's old, so it's hard to pay him too much.
But they missed their chance. Like y'all have already said, they missed their chance to get him at a better number. That way you wouldn't have to do this. His running buddy Zeke screwed it all up. And his stupid holdout last year, he screwed it up for now. If Zeke doesn't have that, if he plays through his contract and doesn't do his stupid junior high holdout, like he's a junior high type of mentality there, you've got Dak now, and it's all good, I think. But maybe I'm too.
On the other hand, they might have been trading Zeke for draft picks with Dak coming on and playing so well last year too. So I don't know. But yes, I'm with you. I think Zeke was probably got what he's worth, but it's hard to say any running back is worth that in the NFL in the big scheme of things. And that's the tough situation for me there, is that I love Zeke. I think he's a great player, and I think he should get paid and make all the money. But in the modern NFL, running backs, the difference in performance that you get from what you're paying Zeke to what you're paying like three guys in a platoon, it's and the right scheme, I don't know. It's not worth that much money. It's not worth a couple of offensive linemen or good defensive ends, or a good cornerback even.
Mm-hmm. We are undefeated on our Cowboys podcast, guys. Not a bad way to spend a late Sunday afternoon, early evening. Appreciate you guys.
Agreed. Good time.
This is fun. We'll do it.
Thanks. Y'all have a good one.
Yeah. Take care. About once a month in the off season, and during the year, if you did not hear us at the very start, that we plan on doing these after each and every game. Get those hot takes right after, but that'll put another wrap on another Cowboys special here on the Texas Porch. But if you liked it, please tell a Cowboys friend or 10. You can find us on Twitter and Facebook, Texas Porch Pod. Again, stay tuned. Sundays during the season, after each and every game, plan to do an instant reaction show to each of the Cowboys' 8 wins. I guess I adjusted it. Each of the Cowboys' 9 wins and 7 losses will have post-game reactions with us knuckleheads. But watch your phones Thursdays for each of the regular crew as well. But thanks for joining us for this special Cowboys edition out on the Texas Porch. Have a great night. God bless, and we'll talk to you next week or something.
All right, cut Dak. Shut up.